Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this lightning talk. Expect the unexpected and build resilience in AWS. This is a short presentation, 15 minutes, so I'll quickly cover an overview of the AWS resilience best practices and how AWS resilience partners can help customers in achieving their resilience goals. Anybody here is an AWS partner? Okay, so we have a few partners, that's great. This session was initially intended for partners, but customers can also use the same techniques I'm going to tell here on improving their resilience levels. Quick agenda for today. An introduction of resilience. What does it mean, resilience in AWS? What's the business impact of not building resilient applications? What are the possible causes of downtime? And what is the AWS approach and AWS resilience mental model on building a practice? And some of the benefits in offering resilient solutions if you are an AWS partner. Let's get started. Well, resilience is all about planning for a bad day, planning for the unexpected, planning for when an application that cannot go down ended up going down. Everybody familiar with this sentence, with this quote from Werner Vogel's Amazon.com CTO? Everything fails all the time. And any complex system is likely to have a mixture of failures, like some small failures that are more likely to happen on a day-to-day basis, versus some other issues that are more rare to happen, like some more like natural disasters, for example, over the life cycle of these applications. So because of this, it's really important for organizations to expect and plan to build systems ready for failures and design workloads to recover from failures in a way that minimally impacts their users, their end users. So who is responsible for resilience? And some people may assume that the cloud is inherently resilient. Well, this may be true, especially for some customers that are coming from on-premises world. But the same way as we have in security, AWS has a shared responsibility model for resilience. AWS will take care of the resilience of the cloud. If a server or a rack or hard disk fails, we are going to replace that, and that's very transparent to the users. But it's up to the customers, with support of partners, to make some other resilience decisions. For example, should I have these workloads spread among multiple availability zones? So if in case one server fails, the impact is minimized because I have replicas running in distinct locations. So knowing that things can fail, why this is important and why should I invest in building a resilience practice to help customers? Well, one of the first things I've learned early in my career is that resilience is expensive. Downtime is not resilient. Downtime is expensive. And depending on the industry, critical applications downtime can cost between hundreds of thousands of dollars per hour of downtime, up to maybe millions of dollars per hour of downtime. And of course, that depends on the industry. And not only that, organizations, they face a variety of different other type of situations that negative impacts that can be caused by downtime. For example, loss of revenue, as just mentioned. Brand impact, customers thinking that maybe your company is not reliable because your servers or systems are not reliable. Productivity disruption, the systems are down, your employees are not producing. Regulatory penalties, in some situations like financial sector, healthcare, and now with the most recent DORA Act in Europe, there are some regulations that determine the uptime that the systems needs to be available. And these risks and costs are going to continue to rise because over time we're increasing the dependency on how companies depend on systems to keep their operations at a normal, as a new standard. So when it comes to failure, what to expect? What are the possible causes for downtime? And the downtimes can be categorized in the likelihood of they happen. So we have a range of more probable type of downtimes, for example, code deployments and configuration, and some other type of incidents that are categorized as a more unlikely type to happen, like highly unlikely scenarios, for example, a flood or fire in the data center. So I'll start with the types that are more likely to happen. As then you can see, some of them, if not all, they sit more with the customer responsibility to implement and mitigate the guardrails to prevent downtime. First one, code and configuration. So bad deployments, application misconfiguration, some routing policy that has been applied and it's breaking the network. Of course, partners can implement some DevOps guardrails to protect and prevent this to happen, along with a good cloud operation practice to prevent that this happens, or to mitigate the impact of this happening. Then the next one is core infrastructure. This sits a little bit with AWS side. Rack failures, server failure, network failures. This is very transparent to the user. The best practice would be make sure you have utilizing regional services or eventually multi-availability zones to make sure that you're mitigating the risk when a rack fails. AWS replaces that rack. It's transparent to the users, but at the same time, you have to use some techniques to minimize the downtime. Next one is data and state failure. Applications that are not able to read and write the applications. Eventually the data is corrupted, somebody deleted the data, or the data is missing or has been compromised by a ransomware attack. This is more like the disaster recovery or data protection plan to make sure that you have your data protected. Next, it's about dependencies. Third-party software, some other dependencies connecting to the on-premises data center to some legacy system that is a single point of failure. That thing happens, sometimes you don't have control on that, but it's some of the risks that you have to analyze and make sure that you understand. And finally, the highly unlikely type of scenarios. Flood in the data center, fire, meteor strike in the data center. And it's very funny when I talk to customers because the conversation generally starts with the more unlikely type of scenarios, like they're more worried on how we treat flood in the data center, versus we should start taking care first in the code deployment because the likelihood of that breaking a software or deployment is higher than actually a flood or fire. So with that in mind, AWS created a few mechanisms, processes, and frameworks that are focused in providing guidance on how to increase resilience. And I would like to start with this very simple model. We need partners who can set the foundations with our customers. And by foundations, I mean making it clear to customers that we have this shared responsibility model, assessing the customer's application to determine how critical they are, making risk analysis to understand what's the business impact in case these applications are not working, or if they have downtime. Implementing DevOps as a practice and guardrail to minimize and mitigate the downtime. And of course, implementing the overall idea of how important resiliency is to the business. Next, we need partners who can design applications to be resilient. And by design, I mean working backwards from the assessment, like how much the business cares about these applications to be resilient, and you design the capabilities for this application to be resilient. And here I'm talking about the high availability perspective of one application. On the other hand, we also have to plan for recovery of those applications. So recovery is the same as in disaster recovery, where replicas of this application in question are replicated to maybe a different AZ, a different region. And sometimes we recommend having checkpoints in time because in some situations, not only maybe you don't want to restore the latest version of the data you have, but you may want to restore a previous point in time data. For example, data corrupted or a ransomware attack. Restoring the latest version of data is not useful. You have to restore maybe 10 minutes before or half an hour before this incident happened, or to the health point in time where you can actually restore the data. And finally, we have the operations of this critical environment. Teams that are alerted in a timely fashion, that they have clear runbooks and expectations of how to operate and restore this environment, and restore it to normal operations. And it's important in operation teams that they are also responsible to review incidents, because incidents will happen. And by review incidents, we expect that they generate an actionable event or an actionable list of things to improve either the architecture, the recoverability, or the operations of this environment, so you can learn from mistakes and keep improving and raising the availability of these environments. So you may be wondering, how do I apply this information about design, design, recover, and operations and the foundationals? AWS just released this a couple of months ago, and based on years of working with customers and internal teams, we developed the Resilience Lifecycle Framework that captures some of the lessons learned and how to apply that. This is used like in 5 steps, where we start with first setting the objectives. And as I mentioned, you do an assessment, you understand the expectations for this application, and you start defining, designing and implementing towards those availability goals. So designing could be for either high availability or disaster recovery. Then you start evaluating and testing if you can actually meet the availability goals. There are some techniques like chaos engineering or fault injection experimentations where you can actually test and validate if the goals that you're trying to achieve are feasible with that architecture. Well, it passed the test, you hand over to operations, operation teams are happily operating this. Incidents will happen at some time, and that will happen, that's a fact. That's when you have the chance to run your runbooks, make sure that the teams operate. If something has a chance to be improved, you just run this process of a correction of errors improvement. Lessons learned will generate new recommendations for architecture or designing applications, so you can learn from mistakes and make sure that the errors are not repeating again. And AWS has a very large suite of services that can help you to meet these resilience goals. Of course, I would love to talk about all of them. It's a lot of services. It's a 15-minute. So this is just an example of how AWS can help on building resilient workloads. Now, benefits and opportunities for partners. Well, partners can impact the customer satisfaction. So when they're working with a partner, most customers, they are expecting that their critical applications are designed and managed to withstand and recover quickly from downtime. You can also differentiate your offerings because you're being intentional when you're designing for resilience and utilize the AWS best practices that are available in the AWS Builders Library. And finally, you can increase the revenue opportunities because through enhanced capabilities, and you can qualify for RFPs that are critical for applications where they have this high level of resilience or sensitive applications that are sensitive to downtime. This is a type of application you can start supporting customers with. Well, that's all that I have for this. We have a booth right here. It's the 314. The whole AWS Partner Resilience team is there. If you want to interact and learn more how to build a resilience practice, feel free to stop by, or if you want to understand how to utilize some of the AWS services to reach your resilience goals, just feel free to stop by. We're going to be here all day. Some related sessions. So if you really want to improve your resilience capabilities, we have over 100 sessions on this re:Invent that talks about resilience. Of course, I cannot put 100 sessions on this deck. I just cherry-picked 10 of those. Some of them already have been gone through this week. I don't know if they have repeats. Some of them are going to happen still throughout the week. And some of them are going to be available in social media in a few days after re:Invent finished. So it's just bookmark and make sure that you watch if you want to improve your technical capabilities when it comes to resilience. Well, that's all that I have for today. So thank you very much for attending this session, and enjoy re:Invent.